Hey, everybody, this is Tom Sega from Duluth Pack, and this is the Duluth Pack podcast, Leader of the Pack. Our very special guest today is somebody I've known for a long time, Karen Pionk, General Manager of Sheraton Hotel, Duluth, and all around great person. Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I can't imagine after all those years of sitting in cold hockey arenas here, we would be doing a podcast together, but
Crazy times, I'll tell you, Karen. But we're here to learn all about you because you've made it to running an unbelievable hotel and an unbelievable chain, Sheraton Hotel chains, unbelievable, beautiful hotel in Duluth here. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about you and where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
yeah. I'm a transplant to Minnesota via marriage. I originally grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. Both my parents are from that area, met high school sweethearts, and we planted roots in the Omaha area. And I consider that like my childhood home and where my roots are. Went to college in Nebraska, and then fast forward many years, met my husband, who's originally from the Duluth area, while we were both living in Omaha. And then a roundabout way, we made our way up back to his home in Duluth. And honestly, when we moved here, I said, the irony of it is that we're doing this time of year because growing up in Nebraska, spring was spring. We hunted for Easter eggs outside, but we moved up here on April 1st, and it was kind of a slushy, snowy day on the 31st when we closed on our house. Moved up here April 1st, I opened up the blinds in our bedroom, and I looked at Scott and I said, "It is snowing." And he was like, "Oh yeah, sometimes it snows in April." And I said, "All right, I think it might have been that day." I said, "I give you 5 years. Like, you can't be a part of a community when you move into it unless you've established yourself for 5 years." I said, "I give you 5 years." And on 5 years, one day, we are out of here. And now we've been here since 2000. So 23 years later, I'm the one who's like, I'm never moving from here. So yeah, I'm originally from Omaha, but my heart now belongs in northern Minnesota.
So, Karen, what did you go to college for? What was your major? And were you always looking at the hospitality industry?
No, I wasn't always looking at the hospitality industry. I think it found me, kind of off the cuff, if you will. I went to school. I was one of those, back in our day, I can say that, Tom, because I know we're really close to the same age. When you entered college, you had to declare your major as an 18-year-old. And so I think I started off as a business major, decided that wasn't very interesting. It was rather boring. Switched to nutrition, that was one semester's worth, took a class where there was a cadaver. They opened the box and I passed out and said, "Nope, I don't think I need to be a nutritionist." So then I said, well, I like the creative side, maybe graphic design. But again, graphic design wasn't really a thing, as much of a thing as it is now. And I had to take a lot of art classes, and art's not, I can appreciate art, might not be able to produce it. So I ended up back in the business school and really focused, honestly, at that time, my passion was marketing and advertising. Marketing was kind of a loose term. Advertising was a stronger term. The college that I attended didn't have a major of that sort. So I worked with my advisor and more or less created one for me. So I went to school for marketing and advertising. And found my way into hospitality as I was going through college. I think that was my first introduction to it. So I paid my way through college via working in the small community I went to. The big hotel there was a Holiday Inn, and I bartended there and really got exposed to the hotel world, even through a serving position. Noticed folks walking around the hotel wearing suits, and I kept saying, "Who are those people? Who are those people?" And I learned that that was the leadership team, and did a couple other stints in my career. And lo and behold, I wound up back in hospitality doing national or global sales for Hyatt hotels in Omaha. And
Tell us about that. So you got into national sales for Hyatt. What all goes into that? What do you are you selling rooms for one hotel or are you selling rooms for the whole gig?
it was kind of a great experience. One, I had to brush up on my geography because you have to know all the cities and states that the hotel properties were in. So my role was literally to specialize in a couple different markets. And a sports enthusiast, I naturally gravitated towards anything sports related. And then being in Omaha, Des Moines, such an insurance hub. So those were kind of my two specialty markets that I focused in on. So I called on national accounts that took events, meetings or events anywhere in the basically US or in North America. We also sold the Caribbean islands as well. And I would try to get them into one of our properties, whether it was, the Hyatt Regency San Diego or the, Hyatt Bethesda, Maryland, whatever it might be. That was kind of my job. So
Would you also work on selling rooms from like instead of just a conference, but hey, negotiate rates for corporations?
um, so that is a market segment that we call business transient. So, if a company or organization is going to have a rate that's good across the brand, if you will. So let's say even currently with the Sheraton brand, if whoever, I don't want to name drop a company, but a major company has a rate so that anytime they stay at any one of our Marriott hotels, they get a discounted rate because of the volume that they bring into a business or into a hotel, into that collection of hotels. There are things like that are done on a global level. So there's national accounts managers that specifically focus on those corporate business transient rates. When I was with Hyatt, I didn't. I worked more in the group market segments.
Okay.
So big,
And now,
quarterly meetings, or back in the day, the insurance companies used to do sales incentives. So, Mutual of Omaha would have a sales incentive, and I would convince them that they wanted to take those top producers to the Hyatt in Kauai, and so I would then look for space dates, rates, and work kind of as that ambassador for the client back to our hotel properties, and also represent the collection of hotels back to the client.
so when it came to a conference in Hawaii or in the Caribbean, did you get to also travel there with them to make sure they were having a great time and everything went well?
Unfortunately, no. I did turn over the booking then to the actual property managers, but I did get to take a couple of different trips because I was top producer for the San Francisco Bay Area. So of all the global salespeople, they would take the top 10 producers for their area and basically take you on a familiarization trip, aka wine and dine you, and as an appreciation for booking so much business into their city. So
The perks are okay, right?
yeah, right. Incentives. We all work for incentives.
We do. We like our paychecks, and then incentives don't hurt us at all either.
Yeah.
So, Karen, you in 2005, and I hope I'm saying this right, Helms Briscoe,
Yeah.
you transitioned over to Helms Briscoe as a regional manager. What was that all about, and what did that all entail?
Yeah. So then I became, in essence, a customer to the hotels. So Helms Briscoe is a phenomenal company that was actually started by two gentlemen that came from the hotel world. Now being back in the hotel world, they're one of our top accounts, from a total brand collection and that sort of thing. So I then would work with an organization, and they would say, okay, we have a regional training that we're going to do a West Coast, Midwest, and East Coast. We're going to put on 3 different trainings. There's going to be 200 people at each of them. These are our top 3 destinations we want to go to. And then I wasn't committed to any one brand. So if they said we wanted something in Minneapolis, I would look for the key factors and amenities that that organization wanted. I would match hotels. So it could be a Marriott, a Hilton, and a Hyatt that I would say, okay, these 3 hotels in the Twin Cities match what your needs are. And then I would check dates, rates, and space. And then put all of what those hotels bid back in a package and present it to my client to say, okay, here it is. The client would make the decision. I would request the contract and then connect the client with the hotel. So it's in essence, it's I don't want to say service. It's a free partnership to businesses and companies, because the reimbursement comes back through the hotels. So it can serve almost as an extension to the hotel sales team, but then it is a great service for companies that can downsize their travel departments, if you will.
Karen, you mentioned there was 2 gentlemen who started that company. So what was their vision when they first got into it? Because you said they came from the hotel industry. Was there a hole here somewhere where people weren't connected? Go, hey, there's an opportunity. How did they see that?
I don't recall all. 2005 was a long time ago now. But really it was based out of a need, so how do you bridge? You have, like a major company or a larger company may only have 2 or 3 people in their travel department, and they have to put on 50 different events throughout the year. And so there was a service that could be provided to the companies and hotels. And then you think about it, like you're the person in charge of planning. In that example, I used 3 different training sessions in 3 different cities. Now I have 12 hotels calling me. There's no way I can get back to them. But if I have that one point person who can gather all the information, present it back cohesively, and help guide me through the decision, now it's a win-win, for both the client and the hotels. Because I might, as a hotel operator, I might miss an opportunity or not know about something, but the Helms Briscoe person knows about my hotel and they might include me in a bid or reach out to me for a bid. So it really was a win-win, I think, and an opportunity to bridge a gap between meeting planners and hotels.
Yeah, because I mean, the companies, not everyone can afford to have staff to go find these things and plan all these meetings that companies have to have, or conferences.
And again, being a sports enthusiast, I went after every sports organization I knew. Maybe it was college sports or what have you, that, like when you think about college sports, oftentimes it's the director of whatever, football ops or director of hockey ops that's also planning the buses and the hotels and, and all of that sort of thing on top of taking care of the team. So yeah, I kind of put my focus back into sports organizations and the insurance business, because that's what I knew when I went to work for Helms Briscoe.
Karen, when you transitioned from Helms Briscoe, did you go back into the hospitality, or did you go into marketing at that point? I have notes here, but I don't know if I put notes backwards.
You're making me think here. So let's see. No, I went back into the hotel industry. So the funny story on that one is, when I met my husband, I worked for Hyatt Hotels. I found my passion of working in hospitality. We moved here and I sent my resume to a handful of hotels. Didn't even know if they had positions open. Wasn't making getting any doors open. And we were watching the news one night, and the then director of Visit Duluth was Terry Matson. He was on the news, and Scott says to me, "Oh, I went to college with him." And I was like, "What?" So literally the next day I reached out to Terry. Terry connected me to Anna Tansky. Anna Tansky said, "There's a new hotel that's being built. Here's the ownership group." And I got connected to the Sherman family, and the rest was history from there.
So you went to Sheraton.
Before it opened.
Right, that was before it opened.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the hotel opened in May of 2007, and I started in early March of 2007, because when they made the job offer, I said, yeah, but there's a Wednesday and Thursday I'm gonna have to be off because our family's gonna go to the state hockey tournament. So I'm gonna start on Monday, but I need to be off on Wednesday and Thursday.
We all have to pick our poison, right? And I think that if any of our listeners know your last name, they're going to understand that hockey is a very important part of your family, and you can talk about that as much or as little as you'd like. But how is it then transitioning to a hotel that hasn't opened yet?
Yeah, so that was one more thing added to my resume. I had worked for a hotel on property, for a Hilton property that had transitioned from another brand to the Hilton DoubleTree. And so I had to go through that process, which I had never been through. And you don't realize how many logos are all over your building until you have to remove them all. So we did that, and that was a lot of work. And so I had no idea what to expect coming in and working for a hotel that was under construction. When we actually were able to get into the hotel and start setting things up and unpacking boxes and such, I describe it as, this hotel is 147 guest rooms. It's like, if you've ever built a house, building 147 of them all at once, because there are a lot of light bulbs that need to be screwed into every light fixture in a guest room, and nothing is assembled. All the banquet chairs need to be screwed together, legs and everything put on it. Like there was a lot of work to be done that I was like, wow, you unpack all the boxes, and you have to wash all the bar glasses and all the silverware and all that kind of stuff. So it was interesting. It was a process that I say the same thing about home building. I don't know if I would ever do it again.
That had to be just unique and such a learning experience, and exciting because everything's new.
Yeah. I mean, I think for myself, especially as you get older, you start to think, my daily mantra is like, did I make a difference in somebody's life today? And, what impacts have I had today? And start my day off thinking, let me see those opportunities where I can really make an impact in somebody's life. And when you drive down Superior Street, I say, like, someday I hope to be driving down Superior Street with my grandkids and be able to point at that building and say, I helped open that hotel, or for generations to come, for people to say, my grandma helped open that hotel, or my great grandma, you know. So yeah, it's pretty iconic, and it's such a beautiful building, and so much was invested in it.
For our listeners, this is the high-rise Sheraton Hotel in Duluth, Minnesota that Karen Pionk, our special guest today, manages. And it is an absolutely beautiful hotel. You guys have done such a great job there. I can tell you that we see some of your customers come in our brick and mortar store, and we always ask, where are you from? Where are you staying? And just ask them how they like the hotel, and people love it. So you're treating your customers well. Karen, can you talk a little bit about that before we move forward on in the hospitality world? The word hospitality maybe gets overused, but it's everything to what you do. Can you talk about that and how you have to train your staff. I mean, all of your staff, whether it is the front desk people
Mhm.
to people who are going to turn your rooms over to the wait staff in hotel in the restaurants and bar and all of that. Can you talk to us a little about that and how you train and ingrain in people that these customers are our lifeblood?
Yeah. You know, it sometimes it seems like a simple recipe for getting there and doing that. It first and foremost, I've worked at, I don't know, half a dozen different properties, and the number one thing is having ownership that is so invested in supporting the things that I do and the job that I do, and the belief they have in us and the trust. It's a lot of trust. It's a multi-million dollar operation, and they have to trust that I'm going to get us there. Um, of course, we're a for-profit organization, but yet, how do you deliver service? Because that service level actually is also very important to that bottom line level as well. And I think that there's a couple things. Because of my background or my studies in marketing and advertising, I'm a brand junkie. I'm the one who says, don't turn it. There's a commercial on, but I want to see the commercial. I want to see. And so believing in the brand, and again, it sounds like such a simple recipe. I'm fortunate because I work for a flagged hotel. So something that comes with a brand name and recognition, and being part of Marriott, we have such a depth and deep well of information and resources available to us. And it would be easy for me to just let everyone say, be Minnesota nice. We could still be a really good hotel and just be genuinely Minnesota nice. And but how do you be different? Because what I talk about with our associates is every hotel in Duluth has a lobby, a front desk, a guest room with beds. Some have restaurants, some have pools. Like, we all have the same infrastructure to its core, right? But how do we go to a different level, and how do we deliver that? And that's through the brand and our brand values. So everything we do, we talk about, like, everything we do within our brand values is our lens. Does it hit all three of our values or one of our values? Or how could we change the way we say something and the words that we use to make it a more branded experience? You can't just put an S on something. The S crest is what we call it. You can't just stamp the S crest on it and say, there, it's a branded experience. That's not. Because that's a logo and an image. Yes, that resonates something, but that resignation comes through that emotional connection that you've made with the brand. And so we spend a lot of time talking about that. And then when it comes to hiring, my interview questions are for every position, from front desk, people we call front of house. So like our front desk associates, our restaurant servers, to back of house, to our mid-level guest contact, where most of those would be like room attendants, to those that have minimal guest impact or contact would be like our cooks in the kitchen and stuff. I hire all of them based on some questions that they can articulate without even knowing what our brand values are. They're already articulating our brand values in what's important to them in life and the way they go about things. And so hiring, even when hiring is hard, it's paid off for us just to take the time and make sure we have the right people, and then really spend that time investing in them on bringing that brand language to life. We talk a lot about culture and community. Community is a big part for us. And tell me a community that doesn't have its own language. If you come to northern Minnesota, we're going to talk about a hot dish. I have a funny side story on hot dish, and other people might not know it. You go, order a soda, a pop, a Coke. in different parts of the country. So like every community has its own language. And so we really spend a lot of time every day. We talk about it. We have a morning stand-up meeting and we talk about something brand related. So we just become these little brand machines that can deliver the Minnesota Nice experience in a whole different way.
So let's hear about this hot dish.
Oh yeah, personal story. My poor husband. So we were dating, and I had never ever heard the term hot dish in my life. I grew up in casserole country, so I didn't know better. And he called and said, "Hey, why don't you come over for dinner?" Also, and I love to cook, so why don't you come over to my apartment for dinner? I'm making tuna hot dish, and I was like, "Oh." I'm like thinking mahi tuna, something. Nope. I got tuna and noodle casserole.
Which we call a hot dish.
Right. I learned what a hot dish was very fast.
Instant love, I'll tell you right there. Wait till I see Scott next time. I'm going to ask him if he can come over for he can make some hot dish, some tuna hot dish.
Yeah, yeah.
Karen, you then left after you opened the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And you go through all that and gain all that experience. You left the industry as a whole, and you went as an account manager at HTK Marketing and Communications.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
They're now Haley Sue. So I spent some time working with them. It was just kind of I wasn't looking to leave, and had a conversation with somebody who was actually looking to hire an account manager. Mike Seifer, he's one of the owners for Haley Sue, and I had gotten to know him through a couple other different networks and such. And we actually had coffee here at the hotel because he was looking, trying to hire an account manager. And I said, "Hey, let's meet and tell me what this means. And then I can help keep my eyes open, or if I know somebody that would be a good fit, I'll let you know." And then I applied. So yeah, I wasn't looking for it. Yeah, left the hotel. I loved it. I had not ever worked in the field where I had gone to school for, which isn't uncommon. But I thought, no, dang it, I'm gonna give this a whirl. I missed hospitality. And so, long story short, I was gone for about 2.5, almost 3 years. And through the time that I was gone, George Sherman, our owner of the hotel, had reached out to me a couple times. And then the last time he reached out, he said, "Okay, I'm thinking the third time's the charm. Will you come back to the hotel and lead our hotel again?" And I called my husband. I said no. And I said, no, I can't do it. I like my weekends again and not working late nights and that sort of thing. And he said, "Well, will you at least entertain a conversation?" And I said, "All right, let me think about that." And I called Scott and I said, "So George Sherman called me and asked me to entertain a conversation about returning to the hotel." And Scott said, I'll never forget, I was standing out in the parking lot. And Scott said, "I'm still trying to figure out why you left." And I said, "Okay, there's my answer." So I drove down to Minneapolis and learned about the changes they had made and the goals that they had set as a company for the hospitality division. And I was right back in my old seat.
You know, it's interesting that as you were talking about that, I do remember when you went back and we had a conversation somewhere when you went back and you just said, "It's in my blood." I remember that comment, "It's in my blood." And I really missed because you're talking and I want to ask questions about, hotels don't close, right? You're open. So nights,
Yeah,
weekends. And as the general manager, explain to us a little about what goes into the crazy hours that somebody in the hospitality, the hoteling industry goes through.
Yeah. Well, it has to be in your blood. Like I always know that when I'm interviewing somebody and I say, "What excites you about the potential of coming to work here?" And they say, "Oh, I love to travel." I'm like, "Well, we're not guests here." Those people usually aren't going to make it because it's not the same when you're working. I describe to every new hire that we are ducks on water. So on the surface, we are gliding along, and underneath, we are paddling to save our dear lives. But the guests can't see that. So it takes a special person and personality to do that and to really be motivated by that. And you get, you know, used to 3 in the morning phone calls that says, there's water coming through the ceiling in the lobby. In an 11-story building, you're not sure where it's coming from. You get used to it, but honestly, those are the little inconveniences. Because the trade-off then is hearing, one, in Duluth specifically, seeing our city through the eyes of visitors is such an amazing experience. Like, you can diss on the city you live in left and right and all day long and talk about the crappy weather and stuff, but then when you hear how visitors view our city, you're like, and I live here. I get to live here, and so that's a pretty cool thing. And then everybody that travels has a story, whether they're away from their family because they're road warriors and their job makes them requires them to be on the road so much, and you learn something about them. And by the time they've left, you understand they have 2 daughters in college and what their wife does for a living. And, it's such a cool experience that you don't get to have in a lot of other businesses in your interactions with your guest or clients. No other business can you work in where people are literally showering and sleeping in your business, right? People don't come to Duluth Pack and get to shower and spend the night and sleep. And
we certainly hope not, Karen. No, I mean, I've never thought of it that way before. I mean, you're their home away from home.
Yeah. And whether they're here, in our case, sometimes people are here for because of hospital reasons, and they've come to the Duluth area because the 2 medical systems we have here are greater than what they might have in a rural area. And we talk about, and honestly, the other day, one of our supervisors said, I have got to tell you this, you're not going to believe it. She said, you always talk about, we have to remember Grandma Gladys from International Falls. She's never been away from her husband, spent a night away from her husband. She's never driven on one-way streets. She is never in International Falls parked in a parking ramp and had to navigate a skyway. So how do we be there for her when she's so worried about her husband in the hospital? And she said, she was doing a stayover service, cleaning for somebody that was staying, refreshing their room for them. And she said it was this grandma lady, and she was from International Falls. She goes, I wanted to ask her, is your name Gladys?
That's a connection that is so interesting. And I could see you just really lighting up when you were talking about your customers and you get to know their families, or Gladys, and she's never experienced this or that before. And that you get to give that to them, even though they're away from their loved ones, or they're trying to be as close to their loved one in a hospital as they can. I really saw you light up, and then it obviously takes a very special person to do what you do, and the crazy hours that you do work. Karen, if you could give advice to somebody who's listening to this and they're going through school and they said, I really like what I hear Karen saying, what advice could you give them when they're seeking roles to get started in the hospitality industry? And somebody who wants to maybe emulate you and say, I'd love to be the GM of a big hotel.
Yeah. Well, personally, I love to mentor, and especially if it's females interested in a leadership role. The number of female GMs is pretty small. So I went to a GM conference once, and it was a division of the US. So I think we were East Coast or something. So we were out in Boston. There were 200 GMs, and there were 10 of us that were females. So I'm used to living in a boy world. I got the 5 boys at home, but I would say, honestly, It's about starting at the ground up. It's an industry that you benefit so much more from if while you're in school, you get a job within a hotel, even part-time, just work 1 or 2 days a week, and you can work in a hotel in any city, any given city. We've had UMD students, I'm thinking of one particular UMD student that was getting his undergrad here, and he worked at our front desk, and then he was going to law school in LA, and he got a job at a Westin in LA because he already had the experience here and he was working 2 nights a week, and there's because there's a hotel everywhere. I'm like, you can start and work any city, there's a hotel. But honestly, it's about having a real perspective. Like I said, you get people that apply for the job because they love to travel. You can have a passion for travel, absolutely, but you have to have a bigger passion for taking care of each other and taking care of our guests. And you get to see that from the inside of a hotel. You get to see when somebody shouts, all hands on deck, and we all go running upstairs, or we all go to the kitchen, or, everybody picks up a different part and piece and steps out of their normal role to help out and put that team together. My mantra always is what's true for our guests is true for our associates. So however we take care of our guests, we're taking care of each other the same way.
I think that's a great mantra. I think we can all learn a lot from that statement right there, because we get so centric on customers, right?
Yeah.
And they are the people who pay our payroll. We get it, but we get really focused on them and forget the important pieces between. I'm going to ask you a really loaded question because I know you're going to go, thanks a lot, Tom. What does a day-to-day look like in the life of Karen Pionk as a general manager of a large hotel?
Well, that would be another piece of advice. If you like to do things in a very routine manner, do not go into the hotel industry. Yeah, I can't reach it right now, but I have a list every day, and I'm like, these are the things I'm going to get done, and I might cross one off. I'm rarely on time to meetings because real life happens, and if an associate needs me, I'm going to be late to a meeting. If a guest needs something, we're going to make sure that that's our priority. So my day-to-day really, I have such an amazing team here at the hotel, so they make my job way easier. My primary focus daily is, are we hitting the financial goals? Are we hitting our measurements within the brand and, our brand standards, and constantly auditing our processes and procedures? And so I'm not a math person, I'll tell you that. My high school girlfriends and I, we joke about our lack of math skills, so we blame it on our high school. But I'm a data digger, so I'm always pulling data apart, and we have so much data within the hotel. Like when you stay at a hotel, please take the time to fill out your guest survey, and please take time to offer feedback, because that's the kind of data that I dig into and keep drilling down and drilling down and drilling down. So how can we get better in that area? But if I just have a score and no comment, I have no idea where to begin. It's kind of like when you tell an associate, if you give feedback like, hey, you're doing a great job, keep it up. Well, what if they're napping when you're not there? And you just told them, keep it up. So if I get a score and there's no comment there, I don't know where to begin on how do we get it better. And so we so value when people take that time to fill that out. And that's literally day to day. I am looking at our guest reviews. I'm looking at our financials. I'm looking at how do we grow our team, grow our business, and then working with our associates. I try to get out on the floor a couple times a day, and interact with our associates that are working each day.
Karen, I'm assuming that you're very much okay if people give a good review as well, because it's so easy these days that people can just give bad reviews when one little thing, all of 99 can go right, one will go wrong, and they'll give you a 1 star. But I'm assuming that you appreciate ones where it's an associate that, a customer feels like they did very well, and please tell us about those as well, because that also from a training standpoint helps as much as a 1-star would.
And think about, this industry, and it is 24 hours a day, and not everybody is a happy camper. You know, we talk a lot about like travel, we romance travel. Like we think of it as just this, like just picture perfect, Instagram moment, if you will. But when the reality of travel comes, I'm actually flying on Friday. I will get to the airport an hour early. I will try to get through TSA, field rush, try to, get my shoes off, get my, whatever. Hope they don't lose my luggage when I get there. Is my car ready when I get there? Do I have an issue? Did my company send the credit card payment in advance? All those things happen. You pack the family into the vehicle and you drive off for vacation and you hit road construction. Like there's so many things of control that get taken away from us. And so sometimes we're the last stop, and you walk in and you've had this horrific travel experience. And then we're like, your room's not ready. Boom, explosion, right? But what if we were like, no, I can get you in, here you go, and stuff. Recognize those people that went above and beyond to make sure, and be gracious and kind, because it is a hard industry to work in. We are on our feet and we are moving 24/7. And, I literally just came from a meeting with our managers into this, and we had opened up some of our reviews, and right in that review, somebody had mentioned, and especially Gavin. Well, how awesome is it for Gavin to say he touched somebody? Like they put his name in that review and called him out for going above and beyond and really just making a connection. That is so valuable, so valuable. And when we're trying to find employees, they need to be rewarded. It's one thing for them to hear from me to say, hey, I saw you interact with that guest. That was amazing. But it's another thing for that guest to say, thank you.
Karen, I know that this comes right from your bones, because we saw you at a wedding a couple summers ago. It was tough hiring people at the time, and I do want to ask some questions about that. And you left this wedding, and I'm looking at Scott and I'm like, where's Karen going? And he said, she's going to wait tables.
Yes.
Don't have enough staff tonight to wait tables. So the general manager of this large hotel is going to wait tables. God bless you, Karen.
Yeah. And my entire family at some point in time, literally all 5 boys, and even my husband, he wasn't on payroll, have come and helped us in some way. I have hired him to shovel. So.
Well, you certainly take ownership, and as a manager, that's one thing, that when a manager takes ownership, everyone can see that. And obviously, if your whole family's there helping you in your business as the GM, obviously you take a lot of ownership. Spring 2020 comes along, and it flips everyone's lives upside down. Tell us what happened in the hotel industry. Number one, were you essential and could you stay open? Number two, how did you staff? And I mean, nobody was traveling. So please just tell us, enlighten us.
Yeah, I think that was something, there was no scripts for any of us. We did stay open the entire time. I always try to look for what were the blessings amongst the challenges. And our hotel actually we had just started our renovation. And so we got to keep going in our renovation without disturbing any guest. That was a huge plus. Guests didn't even know we were renovating floors, because we could control where we put them, and removed them far enough away from our renovation. So that was a huge plus. It was probably one of the hardest times that I went through. Just mentally, physically. I care so much about our associates, and so telling them not to come back to work, and then hoping they would come back and that sort of thing, was emotionally draining. But again, looking for those moments that you can hold on to and say, if we had not gone through that, then we would not have experienced this. And I would say at our lowest staffing point, there were, I think, 11 of us. There were 9 managers and 2 overnight staff people on that we were running this hotel. And the way our team came together, like, like you shared, I was literally serving, and our executive chef was the line cook every day. And we never let each other, nobody was allowed to be down. Like we had some rough days and some long days and that sort of thing, but we rallied and picked each other up and stuff. And that team became so incredibly tight. And then some of our guests, I'll never forget, we had one guest that was, a challenge guest. Like we could never get it right. But that guest was with us through some of those challenging times and became very close with our team. And like literally, I would consider a friend, out of that. And I thought, wow, if we had not got the time to get to know each other, that guest was kind of stranded here because of travel restrictions and such. But yeah, so I don't know. It was hard. I think the other plus that I look at is now, as we've moved forward and we rebuild the team, we are so purposeful with how we build the team. And we got a free reset, if you will. Like every day there's something within our business operations where you're like, oh, that's kind of my angst, or that's my tolerance I just keep putting up with, but I know it needs to be changed. Well, we got to reset and really look at doing business differently. And so I think that was the plus. But yeah, it was, I wouldn't fear if I had to go through something like that again, but I don't want to go through anything like that ever again. And I think that the people that came back to work and have now joined us even since then, they want to be here and they want to do their job. And that's so rewarding as a manager to have these, associates that are just so engaged in everything. That it was bad, but yeah, it's wiki in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, exactly. And are you seeing things back to normal now? Are you seeing your efficiency of room fill? I'm not sure the right terminology, but are you seeing all that in conferences and restaurant and bar and all that back to what we would say is normal?
I hesitate to say normal because I think that we've all changed the way we do business in some degree, and so there's some things that they might be simple things or little things in some regards, but big to some other people. So I think that I think we are at our new normal. And we were fortunate with Duluth, like our ownership, we have hotels in Minneapolis and in Des Moines, Iowa, and our hotel did the best through all of that. Because
Good management.
yeah, well, no, I'm going to say because of location, because we're an outdoor city. And so there were so many people that were coming up here and, because they could come and stay in a hotel that was reputable and that had a commitment from the brand for focusing on cleanliness and yet get outside and hike our trails and walk our lake walk. And so we were very fortunate, again, to see our city and how people used our city during one of the toughest times that they might have been going through.
Well, thank you for that. And folks, our special guest today is Karen Pionk, General Manager of Sheraton Hotel, Duluth, Minnesota. We're going to pivot a little bit, Karen. Now we're going to go personal on you. We're going to learn a little about your personal life.
It's pretty boring.
We call this our packed questions segment. Karen Pionk, what's your favorite hobby outside of work? And you cannot say running to the hockey arena.
No, I don't really run to the arena.
Five boys who played hockey.
I would say knitting. I'm a knitter. Because of hockey, I became a knitter.
Sitting at the arena a lot. What is your biggest fear?
Mm. Ooh, that's a good one. Just scared of, I am scared to death of snakes. So that would be one fear. I would say I'm a mom, so I'm gonna say my biggest fear would be not being able to protect my kids.
What's the favorite place? Because you said there's these perks of travel, Karen. What's the favorite place that you've ever traveled to?
Mm. US wise, I would say New York City. Um, I think if I lived a different life or my path had taken me a different direction, I would have at some point been a New Yorker. Um, Outside of the US, I was fortunate that I got to go to Denmark for about 10 days, and that was my first time using my passport other than for Canada. So that was pretty amazing and I traveled by myself in essence. So I learned a lot about, I would say that is probably the biggest is if you can travel alone to a place that you're not familiar with.
Karen, what's your favorite artist or band?
Ooh, um,
Well,
I'm a
you must have
little,
heard a lot of music in that house with five boys.
well, and yeah, we get a lot of music given to us to listen to. I'm eclectic. I like Zach Brown, Alicia Keys. Those are probably two of my top ones on my playlist. Yeah,
I visited Zach Brown's studio and walked through the whole thing. You'll have to ask me about it
I
someday.
will. I will.
And Karen, the best piece of life advice that you have ever received.
Ooh, life advice. That would be big. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna say that, gosh, um, I, I'm stumbling on life, so I'll give you more of a career. It was given in my career. Um, I had a situation where I was working with somebody who just, it felt like to me, everything, I was like, I'm an adult, but yet you want to see every email I send out, you want to like over the top of me. And it was making me crazy. And I was really frustrated. And I've been so fortunate that that I have a couple mentors in my life. Um, and I was meeting with one of them and I was telling her about this woman makes me crazy and I don't even know what to do and I'm so frustrated and I can be pretty emotional and outspoken and I think my mentor knew the right advice to give me and she said to me, we as women in a leadership role need to make sure that we never ever take another woman's dignity from them in their leadership role. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, I kind of walked away and then I just let that one marinate. And I thought, that is so true. It can be challenging for women to step into untraditional roles and not in a terrible, like, nothing's fair for me. I don't mean that, but it's just not always expected. Or you might have to enter into conversations differently. And I just thought that is so true. And I've been in some tough situations, and that was easier to navigate in my role where I was having to make tough decisions or lead conversations that were really challenging. It was so good to have that in the back of my head because that other female's dignity was my priority. Yes, we had a tough decision to make, but we need to do it in the most dignified way. Um, and I think that's something that I will cherish forever and ever. And I always think of, and it maybe not female to female, but just anyone's, make sure that even when we're dealing with a guest, like I cannot remove their dignity from this conversation. They might be madder than heck at me and not even speaking in a normal sentences, but somehow there's a gift in there and I need to make sure I protect that.
That was great advice that you were given.
Yeah, I cherish it. So, yeah.
Folks, our special guest today is Karen Pionk, General Manager of Sheraton Hotel Duluth. If you are traveling to Duluth, look Karen and her hotel up. If you listen to this podcast, you're going to be treated well because Karen cares.
And I say, like, ask for me at the front desk. Say hello. Tell me you heard this and you want to introduce yourself. I would love that. And then there's an extra plus to it. The front desk team knows that if you show your ID and you're from Nebraska, they're going to let me know because you get a hug. We Nebraska people have to take care of each other.
Well, you're going to have a whole bunch of guests just telling you that they're from Nebraska. Now they want to get good
No,
old
we're going
hug
to check your
here.
ID because I'm not.
Okay.
No, because then I'm going to start asking you about Big Red football and I'll know if you're telling the truth or not.
There you go. Karen, thanks so much for being here and sharing your path with us. It's been really exciting, and in the hospitality industry, which is not always the easiest industry to be in. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Tom.
Well, anytime. And folks, until next time, unplug from the indoors and recharge in the outdoors.